I'm Edwin Samuelson, and welcome to the Cinefiles, the show that allows you to eavesdrop on the conversation of fellow film fanatics. Well, it's the end of the summer, and so that means we'll be discussing 4 of the big superhero films that came out this summer. They're based on comic books, and the movies we'll be discussing are The Dark Knight, Hellboy 2, Incredible Hulk, and of course, Iron Man. But before I begin, let me introduce my co-host. To my left, Mr. Eric Cohen.
Hello.
To his left, Jeff Galashaw. And to his left, Mike Foltz. All right. Well, let's start off with...
Wait, hold on.
What?
I've only said this 2 other times. But yes, we're talking about the summer comic book superhero films of 2008. But we are not going to be talking about that piece of shit, Hancock.
Well, that doesn't even count as a comic book movie or a superhero movie. It's just...
Guys, comments on that? Comments?
No comment. Let's move on.
Okay. Well, let's start off with the film that's been in development for many, many, many years. I remember...
How many years?
I'd say at least 15, 20, because I remember in the 1990s... I remember in the 90s seeing Tom Cruise's name attached to play the lead role, and thankfully they wised up and actually went to a real actor and got Robert Downey Jr. to play the title role, which is Iron Man, which was directed by Jon Favreau, a director not really known for directing comic book type films. He was more...
Oh, he did it Zathura. How is it? Am I pronouncing that correctly?
Zathura. That's more of a children's thing.
Which was a children's thing, but it had that sci-fi, pulpy, fantasy aspect to it. That was probably his little testing ground.
And Elf.
This one, I gotta say, I was not expecting much because I'm not a big Jon Favreau fan. I saw a few of his films, like the ones he made with Vince Vaughn. I thought they were overly self-indulgent and just crap. However, it looks like he actually grew up, actually said, I'm going to make a real movie, get a real actor, and it was very smart they got Robert Downey Jr. because, you know what? He's the reason the film works. He's brilliant in the film. The role of Tony Stark, the millionaire who is a big egomaniac, would be very hard to play because you could make him very unlikable and very, just arrogant. And Robert Downey Jr. does a very good job of balancing that, where he makes him very likable yet, self-centered. And I thought he did a brilliant job of it. And Robert Downey Jr. sold the movie. I mean, he's fantastic, and that's the reason I really enjoyed this film.
Well, the person that we got to see as Tony Stark is somebody that I've always seen. Every time I see Robert Downey Jr., I fully believe that he never does a bad job. And I'm just really, really thankful that Hollywood finally woke up and said, this is a guy that we can bank our money on. And, the rest of America and the world says, something, we love him too. And this wasn't the only thing that he's done this summer that's been fantastic, but that's for another show. But yeah, it really made Tony Stark an A-list superhero, especially when it comes to the Hollywood bigs and people. Because everybody talks about Spider-Man and the X-Men and Fantastic Four, but, Iron Man comes out and the special effects were great.
I was very surprised, too, about special effects, because Iron Man was a completely CG creation, and I really don't like it.
Well, they took a lot of care. I mean, for one thing, Jon Favreau, say what you will about his early work, he always struck me as a very intelligent guy in the industry. I remember watching Dinner with Five, his IFC show, and I thought he came across as a very grounded, intelligent guy. He really understood how the machinery works. And so it seemed like he cannily set up his life for Iron Man, or a film like Iron Man.
Great dialogue.
It's a very, what I like about Iron Man, it's a very sophisticated movie. It's almost like a 1930s screwball comedy with a superhero element, basically. And it was well cast, well written. That's what made the film for me. Really well cast and really well acted. Jeff Bridges was great in it.
But you weren't sure about.
But Robert Downey Jr., when they announced his casting, he had a huge fan support behind that. Everybody was like,
brilliant.
Yes,
from the word
that's
the day
probably why the studios were like, okay, let's give it to him.
Let me ask you guys, and I know you guys both read the comics. I know you at least read comics.
I'm not a huge I'm not like a superhero fan.
I was
a writer, artist fan.
I was an Iron Man fan.
So I'm not that.
Now, how does the comic book stack up to the film? Do you think it's an accurate depiction?
Oh, yeah.
Of the character?
Very, very. And something with the sequel, we're going to get even more into the Iron Man that was really made famous with his troubles with his alcohol problems in the 80s.
Is this more of an Ultimates
No,
Tony Stark?
This is the original. This is not the Ultimates at all. This is really true to form on how the only difference is in the comic books, instead of being in the midst of like terroristic camp in Afghanistan, he was a Vietnam hero. He was a wealthy industrialist that was captured by the Viet Cong and constructed this suit of armor. And the villain that he
The
fought
Iron
was
Man
a
character
big, fat
didn't
Vietnamese
exist.
guy.
Did the Iron Man character didn't exist before Vietnam, though? I thought that was
No,
like,
no, this was a Vietnam era film.
I have no idea. That's why I'm
character.
asking.
No, I mean, and let's give credit to the late great Stan Winston, because his team of special effects artists actually came up with the prototype
Yes.
armor that was on display at the New York Comic Con, which was really a visual treat to see this this armor. And Robert Downey Jr. actually had to sit in a couple suits of armor for this. It wasn't all CGI. There was actual suits of armor.
What do you think?
And the character Terrence Howard was excellent as James Rhodes, and Gwyneth Paltrow, who I don't like, she was great as Pepper Potts.
That was going to be my comment, because it's very rare that a director, to me, can make Gwyneth Paltrow's characters either passionate or actual likable. Yes, and so that's one of the many things that I enjoyed about the film. But overall, it was great. It was funny when it needed to be. It was serious when it needed to be. I was entertained, and I really enjoyed the film.
I thought they did a really good job of mixing the humor with the thrills. You know, I mean, it wasn't like it would be some very funny moments, but then all of a sudden it gets serious. But it wasn't a jarring, abrupt jump. I really loved the whole sequence in Afghanistan where he's building the first Iron Man suit, and I really thought that was genuinely very disturbing and creepy. You know, where he has this thing to his chest that could blow at any time, and
Which is also very faithful to the comic books.
I loved it. And I loved.
Were you surprised at how much you liked it?
I was, because I'm not going to lie to you. I don't care for Jon Favreau, but after this, I'll actually check out some more of his stuff. Because I saw Made, I saw another couple of films of his, and I really thought they were shit. This one, I have to say, he did a really good job because he trusted Robert Downey Jr. to say, hey, this is your movie. You know, you're the one who's going to be carrying this movie. Let's do it with you. And then he let Robert Downey Jr. take control, really. And that's why the movie works on all levels. Robert Downey Jr. is the movie. I mean, he is phenomenal. I mean, he would give it one of my best performances of the year.
Well, when you mentioned that Tom Cruise was, they were going to change the storyline, actually, and they were going to have Tony Stark actually permanently sealed in the armor and kind of do a modern-day Count of Monte Cristo. Or I'm sorry, the Man in the Iron Mask. I'm sorry.
Then they wouldn't even need to do an Iron Man movie.
Which was a takeoff of not so much Iron Man, but it was a takeoff of an independent comic called The Coffin. But I think there were some rights issues there, and they got it over to Jon Favreau.
That's really weird, because I read The Coffin, and I'd have no idea why. Because the whole concept of The Coffin is the guy is dead.
Yeah.
And he's just preserved in this suit of armor, which is why it's called The Coffin. But
I'm just glad that Tom Cruise was not in it, because
why would Tom Cruise want to spend an entire movie with a mask on? That's the thing I don't understand.
Don't ask me.
I don't think it would have worked with Tom Cruise, because number one is he just doesn't have the personality that Robert Downey Jr. has, and Robert Downey Jr. actually, I was very impressed how he bulked himself up for the role, and I thought he did. I can't stop giving him.
Well, I don't know. I think that I'm not trying to defend Tom Cruise or take anything away from Robert Downey Jr. I think it would just be a different movie, a different take on the character. I mean,
don't you think?
I think what Robert Downey Jr. brought to it wasn't really written into the character. There's just a part that he's sort of an alcoholic and he's sort of a spoiled brat of a mature man, but Robert Downey Jr. really elevated it because he brought his own.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
But he brought his own personality,
into it.
exactly,
Right.
and he brought a ton of charm.
And
Tom Cruise cannot bring that amount of charm. I'm sorry.
And the thing too is that Robert Downey Jr. has a dark side to him, which I think really works well with the character of Tony Stark. You know, definitely, I would say one of the best comic book adaptations in the last few years. What would you guys?
Oh, one of the best.
One of the best. Period. Yeah, I was very impressed.
I'm really looking forward to the sequel.
It really raised the bar.
Yeah, it's going to be one of the. It's going to be the sequel is going to be even better, I think, because as they always say, Richard Donner said in the first Superman film, he said, "Well, the first film we have to set up the rules because they're already established. In the sequel, we can have more fun because we can do what we want to. So I think the sequel will be even better. I really do, and I'm looking forward to it." All right, well, let's get on to the next film, the big film of the summer. And that film will be a relaunch of the Hulk franchise, which the previous film was directed by Ang Lee. This is not a sequel, but a complete relaunch of the franchise, which is very surprised because it was only less than 4 years ago that the Ang Lee version came out. It was a $100+ million movie.
It's also another Marvel Comics.
It's another comic,
adaptation.
another comic, Marvel comic release. This one got a lot of
the reason-
praise and a lot of hate because of its serious approach. Some people liked it, some people didn't.
You mean Ang Lee version?
The Ang Lee version.
The reason why it was remade is Marvel was bought out by this financial consortium, and
Avi
they were
Arad.
no. This was Avi Arad was still a part of the old guard, but he had some influence on the new money handlers with Marvel, and he felt that the first Hulk was a disaster, and he used his influence to convince them that the Hulk was still a money-making franchise and that they should reinvest this. And instead of being, I think it was a Universal
They're both
product,
Universal.
but this one around had Marvel's had more money at stake for Marvel. They could make more money off of it because they were going to make very little off the first Hulk because most of those rights were Universal. And so they gave it another shot, and they felt that it wasn't very kind to the fans because there wasn't a big villain in there. Avi Arad felt that if you made a Hulk film, that you had to have the Abomination in it, and so on and so forth. So that's why we have this film.
Quote unquote, they said the first one was too intelligent. This one is more action oriented.
Well, you have Louis Lederer as your director.
Who actually
of the
did
Transporter.
the Transporter films, which are fun, but I don't know if he'd be the right director for this film. I don't know what to think about this film. This film, to me, it's very blah. I still think the Hulk is a very hard film to translate to the screen because the Hulk has no personality in the films. In fact, I believe in the comic books, from when I read them years ago, the Hulk actually spoke. But this one is just a creature that just destroys the city when he gets mad. There's no depth to the character, and it's very boring. This one, to me, I mean, everything on paper looks like it should work. You got Edward Norton, who's not a bad actor. You got Liv
great
Tyler.
Who Ghost wrote the script.
Yep, and he didn't get credit, and he got pissed, and so he refused to promote the film for a while, supposedly. What do you guys think of this one? I mean,
I thought
everyone's
it was
recast.
Okay. I think of the films that we're going to discuss, for me, it's probably the least memorable. I'm probably one of the few people that actually like Ang Lee's take on the Hulk. I know it's flawed. I know there was problems with it, but when I watched the Incredible Hulk, I found myself missing things from Ang Lee's Hulk. Like I miss, what's his name, Sam Elliott's Ross, and that relationship between him and Jennifer Connelly's take on that character Liv Tyler plays, and all sorts of. There was so much more richness, and yeah, there was pretentious moments in it, and it tried too hard to be a film as opposed to a movie. But I just felt that The Incredible Hulk went in the complete opposite direction to the point where I even thought like the CGI was sloppy. I thought that it was like some of the worst motion capture I've ever seen.
Is this in the first film? Or
No, in the second one.
The second one.
Where it may not have been as advanced in the first one, but there was an attempt to create natural movement in that character and blinking and stuff like that. Whereas in this one, it just seemed like, let's just throw a video game like CGI up there.
Ang Lee actually was the motion capture performer in the
I
original.
think in concept there were cool things. Like I like the idea of the Abomination. I kind of like the design of the Abomination, but it just felt like, it just felt like I was watching a PS3 video game match between two characters, and I wasn't involved in any way. And I know Mike disagrees with me, but I swear to God, Tim Roth started off with an American accent in this film, and it became more and more British as the movie went on.
I have to agree with him on that.
And I was like,
Surprise.
and
I do agree with him. Because he doesn't. I mean, there's something unusual about the way he's in the movie.
I understood Eric's comment before I saw the movie because he saw it before me. I don't see any of that in there.
He was supposed to be an American military man.
No. He said in his interview that it wasn't a big deal. Actually, Emil Blonsky was a Russian agent. That's what it was in the movies.
His accent changes in the movie.
But they just went with it. Or in the comic books.
In the movie, he's
British. He's a British special forces guy.
In the movie, he was a guy. I thought my impression was this.
No. They announce it before he comes in
SAS
that he's on loan from the Royal Navy or whatever.
No, they don't.
Yeah, they do.
Where?
Go back and see it at the beginning when he's getting off the helicopter.
You show me the screenplay.
I'll
buy you a burger.
Jeff, please, could you go for it?
Okay,
well,
I don't think as deeply about this film as apparently everybody else does. I was entertained. It was okay, but, pretty much a day or two after it, I could forget it.
I barely remember it.
I thought Edward Norton was good in it. I did think he was Edward Norton. I thought he did a very.
I thought he was better than Eric Bana.
In some ways, he was better than Eric Bana, but.
And the thing too is, I mean, Nicholas.
Yeah, I'm agreeing with that one now.
Nick Nolte, it was in the original. I don't know what to think of him as a villain or a bad guy in the movie, but he was an interesting villain. I thought Tim Roth was nothing against Tim Roth. I thought his just character was very boring, and it's very much like the same film. The two creatures fight, and that's it. You know, it's boring.
I thought it was a fun popcorn movie. Nowhere near as good as Iron Man. I like the first Hulk, and I like the second Hulk.
Which one do you like better, though?
You know something? I think stylistically, I like the first one. I like the storyline of the second one a little bit better. I like the way that Ed Norton is on the run at the beginning. It's not quite an origin story. It's him on the run. I liked him in Brazil. I thought that was an interesting take, that he had managed to escape all the way to Brazil. And I loved the chase scene throughout the slums on the hills. I thought that was great. And there was, you know, Eric does have a point that some of these special effects and motion capture seem a little bit lunk-headed. But there's a point where the Hulk is running alongside a Humvee and he pushes it over in the park on the college campus. It looked amazing. I thought it looked amazing. I thought it looked like the Hulk was actually there running.
One improvement I have to say, though, is them making the Hulk a little smaller. Because in the first film, he's like as tall as a giant building. You know, this one he is a little.
No,
small.
he's about the same size.
I think he's
both.
a little smaller.
No,
they look like they reduced his size a little bit.
William Hurt's terrible.
Yeah, which is too bad because I like William Hurt. And
He's terrible. He's no Sam Elliott.
He's
Liv Tyler and Jennifer Connelly, they were both fine. You know, in the both separate films. Like I said, I enjoyed it. I liked Tim Blake Nelson, his little goofy role as the kind of college campus. Oh, what was he? He was kind of like the deep throat that was helping Bruce Banner with the situation, and then he becomes the leader.
Right.
Which is another famous Hulk villain.
I like the way they set that up, and of course, we'll probably not see a sequel to this film because it didn't do that well.
Yeah. It had a great opening weekend, but the drop-off was...
Yeah, it looks cheap also.
Let's move on.
Let's move on to the next one. All right, well, the next... Oh, by the way, I have the final thing I have to say. I love Stan Lee's cameo. Awesome cameo. Love the way that's set up.
Actually,
and he had a great cameo in Iron Man.
But I thought Iron Man was the best Stan Lee cameo ever. It was just a nice, quick moment. It was hilarious.
It was
That's my 2 cents.
All right, well, let's get on to the, I think, this is my opinion, the best comic book film I've seen maybe ever. And I was...
Actually, let's go to the next one that was released after the Hulk.
let's
go timeline.
I'm going, no, it's the Dark Knight.
No, Hellboy 2 came out.
Hellboy 2 came out before.
All right, well, I'm going to give it to you. Go
Save the
ahead.
best for last.
You go, Mike.
Jeff. Hellboy 2.
Hellboy 2, which is the continuing adventures of Hellboy. Now, I'm going to admit, I was not the hugest fan of the first one. I didn't think it was totally horrible. I just didn't really get into it because he was just facing all these monsters, and it just seemed like there was nothing behind it. This one, I liked a lot better because there was a villain who wasn't truly too evil. You could see where he was coming from, his point of view. And I like that I cared more about the characters this time because I feel like they gave them more of a background and story and a reason for you to care about the characters. The one thing is a minor thing, but I really enjoyed was the new character they brought in who was the Mist in that, what is it, the suit?
Yeah, that's a Professor.
No, it's not. No. His name is.
He's the German guy.
I want to say Kurt something.
Johann Strauss.
Johann Strauss.
Yes, to me he was like the comic relief of the film, and he really helped move the movie along. My only quibble, and it's a small one, was that I missed David Hyde's voice work from the first film because I preferred his voice work as Abe Sapien than actually using Doug Jones, who is the physical embodiment of Abe Sapien in this film. But I have to say, I surprisingly enjoyed it, and unfortunately, after The Dark Knight came out, its box office seemed to disappear along with the film. Edwin, did you see the film by any chance?
I'm not going to see it.
Okay, so Eric, what are your thoughts on the
I liked it
film?
a lot. I like Hellboy 2 a lot. In some ways, it's even better. I liked the first Hellboy. I maintained it. I think it's the best translation of H.P. Lovecraft. Even though I just thought it was the best visualization of a Lovecraftian scenario on film, the first one. But yeah, I thought Hellboy 2 had a lot of heart, which I really liked. You really felt for the characters. It was a nice rapport amongst the actors playing them. I liked how the villain wasn't. You understood where he was coming from. We were afforded a little bit of sympathy towards him. And there were some interesting moments where the heroes were challenged in certain ways. Like Abe Sapien is willing to give up all humanity just because he loves this princess character, which I thought was interesting. And
I think this film shows more imagination than most films we've seen in probably the last
Oh, the
3 to
Goblin
5
Market
years.
sequence is just.
I mean, this guy,
Amazing.
Guillermo del Toro, the Goblin Market thing, it's like out of a Terry Gilliam fever dream, what this guy produces. The script was funny. It had its dark moments. I think Prince Noir, the main villain, I thought he was a great villain. I liked his henchman, Mr. Wink. I liked Hellboy on his perception of trying to do the right thing, but also being scorned by the general public as a monster. I think two of the most amazing.
And it doesn't get cliche too, because that's a cliche thing.
No.
So from Frankenstein onwards, that's always been sort of a theme in a lot
Yeah.
of films. But they didn't. It was handled very well.
Two of the most amazing scenes in the film, and Edwin, just on these scenes alone, you should be seeing it.
Sorry.
But there's this one scene where Hellboy kills this plant elemental that is supposedly the last of its kind, and it's like a big monster. It's like destroying the city. But once he kills this thing, there's this like moment afterwards that's like incredibly beautiful, but also remarkably sad. And you sit there and go, "Wow, this monster's been destroyed, but I feel horrible about it." And another thing, Edwin, why you should see this, maybe catch it on DVD, is there is this wonderful scene where Hellboy comes and his team meets the Angel of Death.
Oh, that's a great
And
scene.
that is one of the great, that creature is so amazing, that monster is so amazing that it surpasses Cronin, the clockwork villain from the first Hellboy.
All right, well, let's go on to the next one. I'm sorry, guys, because I want to be.
Pure-
No, I'm serious.
pure
We don't
interest.
have much time because I want to discuss The Dark Knight, which is the biggest movie, one of the second biggest movie of all time, as they speak. This was, I think, was the movie I was most anticipating and looking forward to this summer, and I'm happy to say it did not disappoint. Heath Ledger's final role, he is absolutely amazing. He will probably
His final role.
Heath Ledger. Yes.
Well, theoretically,
Oh,
the
yeah.
Terry Gilliam film.
final film role. He'll be in it partially in
Posthumously.
the Terry Gilliam.
Imaginarium.
Yeah. This one, Heath Ledger really shows what a talent he was. I was really impressed with his performance. He was very, very ghoulish and creepy, and it gives a completely different interpretation of the Joker character than Jack Nicholson
Yeah,
did.
I think you're selling this movie a little wrong. I think the real credit to this film goes to Chris Nolan.
Well, I know. I'm giving Chris Nolan credit because he was smart enough to cast Heath Ledger, and he even said he thought that Heath Ledger would bring a very dark and intense energy to the role, and he did. And I every minute that Heath Ledger was on screen, I couldn't take my eyes off him.
That's because Christopher Nolan, at one of the talents you have to have as a director, is you're supposed to see things where nobody else sees anything.
Absolutely.
And he saw in Heath Ledger somebody who could make this Joker not only totally different, but maybe iconic.
Yeah, that's the thing too. Is I was skeptical. I was like Heath Ledger, but he proved me wrong.
I
man.
completely agree with you. But I also want to say, not just Heath Ledger. Heath Ledger was amazing.
Everybody's
it's not one of
great.
these, it's not one of these things where, he died, let's pay him respect. He
No, he
really
earned it.
is that good in it. However, everybody is good, and that's what was amazing to me about this film. It was an ensemble film.
Yeah, there wasn't
It
a
wasn't.
weak link.
It was, and it wasn't like the typical, like the prior Batman films, where Batman's like second fiddle to the villains, and every single sequel, Batman's like the afterthought. It's always a showcase for the actor playing the villain. In this case, it really was an ensemble piece. Everybody had their moment to shine. Even
Gary
Morgan
Oldman.
Freeman had his moment.
Lucius Fox, right?
Lucius Fox had his moment. I love the little things with Michael Caine and Alfred, a little bit of history he was allowing us to peer into in his little stories he was telling, Wayne at one point. And it was like, wow, there's a fascinating history there they created for this character. I want to know more. Gary Oldman's fantastic what they did.
I love Gary Oldman.
Yes.
With his character.
I got to say, though, you know what I love, too? I love the thing with Heath Ledger is where he keeps changing the story about how he got the scars on his face. I thought that was a brilliant move.
Brilliant.
And I have to say, the makeup on Aaron Eckhart I cannot believe I saw that in that movie. It was absolutely one of the most terrifying things I've seen in a movie for
Aaron Eckhart was great.
Yes, he was.
Thank God they got Two-Face right. Thank God Harvey Dent was
Yeah, he wasn't a joke
finally.
like he was in Batman 3.
Yeah.
I mean,
Jesus
the other one. I mean,
Christ.
this one was
Maggie Gyllenhaal was great.
I would say to me there was only one drawback to the film. That was the scene with the fairies. I thought that was kind of clunky and awkward.
The
How
ferries?
the two ferries, the boats.
Yeah, the
Oh.
boat with the prisoners.
I
and the boat
thought
with
it was
the
a
boat
great
ferries.
idea. I thought there was a nice little moment in there.
The most
but
forgettable
I thought
part,
it was
I
like
thought.
there was something about the pacing was off. The acting seemed too histrionic to me. The writing was weird.
I like the way that it was dark though, and it really was dark. It wasn't like toned down. I mean, there's a scene where a guy has C4 implanted in his chest, and goes into a police station.
I like the fact too that not only was it an intelligent film and it was well paced, but the action scenes were
yes.
second to none. And
Very
the
well
way
done.
Nolan had edited it, he did a wonderful job of cross-cutting and getting
It's such an
scenes
improvement
back in.
over his action direction from the first Batman film.
Which, don't get me wrong, it's still a damn good movie, but this one even improves on it. I think he learned a lot from the first film and took those lessons and put them in this next
But
film.
the most
This
amazing
film.
thing was the way that he grounded it in a reality we haven't seen superhero films done in ever. I don't think in the 70s you had like the Spider-Man TV series and they made it in the real world only because it was cheap to do it that way. But there was a conscious effort to like ground this in the real world to the point where it's like if Sidney Lumet directed a superhero film, it would be Batman, The Dark Knight.
Well, I also like too that Christopher Nolan put a couple nice little touches in there as his tributes to James Bond. Especially
Yeah, the
the
Thunderball
rescue
moment.
scene with the Thunderball and the Rosa Klebb with the pointy-toed boot that the Joker was managed to try to kick Batman in the nuts with.
And there's a scene too you just made me think about Heath Ledger. My favorite scene with Heath Ledger is the scene where he says, "You guys want to see a magic trick? I'm going to make this pencil disappear."
Oh, awesome scene.
That was unbelievable. I still cannot believe that they did that.
My favorite scene was even was wordless. Was after the hospital's like exploding and he's just like walking away and it's like the oddest, most left field walk.
Just like a little kid playing a robot.
Right.
Well, Heath Ledger said he studied He did study the right people for the movie. He studied, of course, Malcolm McDowell from Clockwork Orange, his character,
Johnny Rotten.
and Sid Vicious, actually. Sid Vicious.
Did you see the original makeup concept? They had like they came up with the original makeup concept from. He looks like Ichi the Killer.
Really?
Yeah.
Actually, it's Johnny Rotten
And he had
that
punk
he's been
hair.
credited to talk about. Not Sid Vicious. It was Johnny Rotten that he had studied.
Well, if you look
because-
at, you can find it. It's on the internet. The photographs for the original makeup concept. He has Johnny Rotten hair. It's green, and
I
it has
love the
Ichi. It's like Ichi the Killer. Where it's like so cut up, you actually see the veins and stuff.
I love the movie. I think it turned out great. I can't tell you. I was so into the movie. I have been into the movie into this since I was a kid. I felt like a kid watching this. And in fact, when I went to go see it on the opening weekend, I was scared because I saw with a really audience that wouldn't stop talking. I was like, oh shit. The first 15, 20 minutes, they completely shut up and really were into the movie, and so you knew that the movie really
No,
worked.
I had a couple assholes that kept talking.
Well, you
but
have that in every movie.
if you comment on the movie, that's fine. If you're talking about other shit, like what you're gonna have for lunch the next day, fuck you. Pay attention to the movie. But if you're gonna be like, oh shit, that's a big explosion, then okay, that's fine.
We forgot to also give credit to Christian Bale. I think Christian Bale.
Credits.
Our credits. I think the way Christian Bale really continues his terrific performance in the first film. I love the way
best
they end it.
Batman.
I love the way they end this and set up for
Absolutely.
the sequel. Anyway, final
Great
words.
summer of movies.
final
It was a good movie. I especially liked the opening bank heist. Very
good.
Michael Mannish.
Shot in IMAX.
Nice.
All right.
reference.
Well, until next week, we hope you enjoyed this show, and thank you for tuning in. And please check out our websites. Thank you.
Yay, comic books.
Hi, I'm Edwin Samuelson, and welcome to the Cinefiles, the show that allows you to eavesdrop on the conversation of fellow film fanatics. Well, it's the end of the summer, and so that means we'll be discussing 4 of the big superhero films that came out this summer. They're based on comic books, and the movies we'll be discussing are The Dark Knight, Hellboy 2, Incredible Hulk, and of course, Iron Man. But before I begin, let me introduce my co-host. To my left, Mr. Eric Cohen.
Hello.
To his left, Jeff Galashaw. And to his left, Mike Foltz. All right. Well, let's start off with
Wait, hold on.
what?
I've only said this 2 other times, but yes, we're talking about the summer comic book superhero films of 2008, but we are not going to be talking about that piece of shit Hancock.
Well, that doesn't even count as a comic book movie or a superhero movie. It's just
Guys, comments on that? Comments?
No comment. Let's move on.
okay. Well, let's start off with the film that's been in development for This one, I gotta say, I was not expecting much because I'm not kidding. I'm not a big Jon Favreau fan. I saw a few of his films, like the ones he made with Vince Vaughn. I thought they were overly self-indulgent and just crap. However, it looks like he actually grew up, actually said, I'm going to make a real movie, get a real actor, and it was very smart they got Robert Downey Jr. because, you know what? He's the reason the film works. He's brilliant in the film. The role of Tony Stark, the millionaire who is a big egomaniac, would be very hard to play because you could make him very unlikable and very, just arrogant. And Robert Downey Jr. does a very good job of balancing that, where he makes him very likable yet, self-centered. And I thought he did it for many, many, many years. I remember back
How many years?
I'd say at least 15, 20, because I remember in the 1990s. I remember in the 90s seeing Tom Cruise's name attached to play the lead role, and thankfully they wised up and actually went to a real actor and got Robert Downey Jr. to play the title role, which is Iron Man, which was directed by Jon Favreau, a director not really known for directing comic book type films. He was more.
Oh, he did it. Zathura. How is it? Am I pronouncing
Zathura.
that correct? Zathura.
That's more of like a children's
Which
type
was a
film.
children's thing, but it had that sci-fi, pulpy fantasy aspect
yeah.
to it. That was probably his little testing ground.
And Elf.
I